But true empowerment is that ability to take a back seat, sometimes to our own agendas, and serve. I think you nailed it on the head.
We are super excited to introduce you to our 300 Sons for City Soleil campaign. As you can see, we have these blank canvases here, and the beautiful thing that's gonna happen is we're gonna take these suns and we are actually literally gonna build a piece of art that is a sunrise that represents all of you coming together for the kiddos that we adore in City Soleil. So it's $25 a month commitment, and every single one of them comes together and makes a huge impact. We cannot wait to see who joins the Upstream family.
Let me ask the question. Let's start off there. What does empowerment mean to you? It doesn't need to be the definition of empowerment, but I mean, we've been throwing that word around for a long time. It is now currently probably what we would consider a buzzword, but for us it means something. So what does it mean to you?
You know, okay, so it kind of, for me, a little bit ties into what we talked about with Mike Hesh a few weeks back when he was talking about servant leadership and how if you are truly leading somebody by serving them, that they will be growing and they will be flourishing, basically. They'll be better off than when you started with them. So I feel like empowerment is much of the same in the realm that if you're truly empowering somebody, they're going to be growing. They're going to be accomplishing like what it is that they're supposed to be accomplishing. So I would say it's like tied in a bit.
Yeah, I think that's solid. In what ways have you seen, can you think of a way that you've been empowered or the way that you've empowered someone else as an example to your definition?
You know, I think sometimes when I tell Roman, go do the dishes.
Yeah.
And then he does them. He is empowered.
Some serious servant leadership right there, since your definition was servant leadership.
Okay. Here's a better example. Roman and Dorian do the dishes together.
Yeah.
If you unload, Dorian, you unload the silverware. Roman, you unload the rest. I'll load.
There you go.
That's a good example.
Super solid.
Thank you.
Yeah,
good one. That's some solid parenting right there too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, empowerment, obviously I get long-winded, so I'll try to give my shortest, most simple version.
You get long-winded?
Long-winded, talk a lot. It's something I'm trying to work on.
Really?
I'm not progressing very well in it.
You're not empowered?
Yeah, people have empowered me to talk too much.
I have not.
You have not, yes.
Actually, I do enjoy listening to you sometimes.
There was a day where you would sit down and just listen to me babble all day.
Yeah, I remember. It was around like December of '99.
Yeah. One night, I got my first evening to share my whole story.
Just kidding.
Anyways.
Babe. Okay, anyways, go ahead.
Probably easiest for me to give an example first before my definition. But obviously where we use the word empowerment is a lot in our organization and the way that we work with others. For me, empowering kind of just means that. What is the best way to work with others? Unfortunately, I wasn't very well educated in some of the places that God was leading me to serve in. And psychology has taught me that when you don't know enough information, your brain creates a story. So when I thought about impoverished countries or evangelizing countries or whatever it was to go serve and work in a country,
you know, like what you could do for them. Yeah,
everyone's
natural inclination.
Almost always thought, what is my part and what can I do?
Yeah.
So where empowerment becomes real for me is once all of those mystery questions began to be answered in spending time with people and in their culture and in their countries, and not just seeing their problems, but seeing what led to their problems, starting to realize that much of their solutions rest with them. And now it becomes empowering them.
Yeah, I think that it's everybody's like natural inclination at first to have that mentality of like, okay, like what can I do to fix this? What can I do to change this? And hopefully, as we're all growing and learning, we have less and less of that, where we really have the understanding like, I mean, I always say the older I get, the less that I know.
Sure.
And I hope that that's the case for most people when it comes to serving other people. You know, that, yes, of course, you're going to hone in your skills. Yes, of course, there's going to be things that you become naturally more, efficient at, better at, whatever. But hopefully one of the main things is realizing how much more value there is in really like listening to somebody else and hearing, because they're obviously going to know the solutions far better than you are stepping into their situation, you know?
Yeah, they're living it, they're breathing it. It's normal for them. I mean, there is always something to be added in having an outside perspective. You know, I think of sometimes even my own problems. You know, there's times where you want to share them with people just to have their ear, to offer comfort. And sometimes you're really welcoming their ideas because they have an outside perspective. For me, empowerment really just is that.
And sometimes you're not welcoming it and they give it anyways. But then you can kind of go away and be like, oh, hey, you know.
Yeah, totally.
But that's where the listening comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want is just somebody to just come in, not hear you out at all, and just tell them what they're going to do or what you're going to do for them or to them, you know?
So when I think of the word or the definition of empowerment, it first for me implies something. It implies that somebody wasn't being given the opportunity to do something for themselves, which is, you know, it ties into basically my experience in Haiti. It wasn't that there wasn't capable people around. They just were lacking particular tools or resources to accomplish.
Or somebody to just tell them, you can do it.
Right.
You know, like, I believe in you. Yes. I'm here for you.
100%.
How can I support you? How can I, you know, empower you?
Being seen and heard. You know, so when I think of empowerment as an action in our organization, we are at a state now, you know, 10 years later, where we are working together, but there are certain people that are empowered to do things that they are best equipped to do, far better than I could do them. And empowerment for me just is one, giving them that permission, and then sometimes the resources to do that.
And one of the things that has been really cool for me personally to see, you know, obviously we've been doing this for, like you said, over 10 years with Upstream, but one of the things, I think because it's something that hits personal to like the things that I'm passionate about, is that for years, you know where I'm going?
I do.
Where am I going? Tell me.
Well, I was going to ask you, how does I hear you oftentimes saying empowering moms or women to be able to take care of their kids.
Oh, I wasn't even going to talk about that. We could talk about that later.
That'll be the next question then.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So what I was actually going to say is, you know, for years, the sole responsibility of taking pictures and videos and things like that and getting them on our website and getting them on social media and all of those things laid on my shoulder or my shoulders. And that sometimes was a very heavy burden to bear, but not everybody has those same skill sets and those same giftings. And so it's actually been really cool for me. And it kind of happened by force because of us moving, you know, back to the States and the level of violence. And there's just certain things, like there's a difference between me going into City Soleil right now and a Haitian person, right? There's just a difference. And so to have Pushy now like on staff with us and him doing that and really doing so well is really exciting for me, because it's like all I could have ever wished for is just to have a local person who has different eyes, different, you know, maybe he doesn't have the same level of experience or blah, blah, blah. Who cares? But he's really talented. And so with that, also now having been on staff with us and just seeing that teamwork of like getting all of this new content sent to us, like straight from a Haitian person, from his perspective, and then having Ben be able to do that stuff, you know, it's been really freeing for me because, and are there parts of it where you have to let go of like how you are used to seeing it done, or how you would maybe do this, or you would maybe do that, or whatever. And do I still sometimes, you know, be like, oh, like I want to do this part or that part? Yeah, that's like my own issue. Yeah. But it's so cool to see somebody else just empowered to do that, and or more than one person empowered and just working together. That's been really exciting for me to see, and probably because that's a newer thing. You know, like we've been supporting Guy and supporting different leaders for years and years and years. And so now to see somebody, you know, in this last year that's kind of risen up, like, hey, I can meet this need, and to just empower him and get him the tools, you know, like he needed something other than, you know, a flip phone, and he needed then, you know, like there's just certain things that he's going to need, and helping him get those tools and then watching him do his thing and working with Ben has been really cool for me. Such
an incredible example. I mean, you pick that apart. You know, the very people that we want to help, you know, like, so you take this back to the beginning, 10 years ago, showing up there, the same motive was there of wanting to help, provide help. to know that it would come through helping somebody else do a very job that you went there to do, right?
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
like there are so many pastors now and missionaries and what we call jacks or elders underneath like our care that are doing what I thought I had to do before.
Yeah.
And now
It's so
you
cool.
are seeing like, and I know, right, exactly. Would I do it different? But in that...
That doesn't mean that what we would do different is right.
Right, and
you
in
know?
the way that they do it different, though,
Yeah.
that is empowerment, right? So, yeah, I don't know how you would expand a definition for it, but it really is. It's sharing. It's giving away some of what you may feel entitled to another, and sitting back, and it becomes this kind of...
I think a lot of it
whole
is checking
cycle.
your own heart too,
Sure.
because I think so many times we can, without even maybe realizing it,
Yeah.
we can want things that aren't necessarily for us, or we can want a position that is not necessarily for us, or we can want the recognition that isn't necessarily for us. And so it's just a matter of like checking your heart and being like, why am I doing this?
Right.
And like, what is God actually asking of me? And for us, we know that he's asking us to empower other people. And does that mean that we have no part in it? Of course not. I mean, our part is empowering people,
Yeah.
and there's a beauty in that too. But it's, that's an example lately that's definitely been exciting for me to see. Like every time we get new content from him, I'm just like, what? Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Especially when he was like first starting with like, I don't even know how old the iPhone was that he was using. It was probably one he got from us
think it
a
was
long
an
time
iPhone
ago. Who
7,
knows?
actually.
Yeah. And great, but then we're like, like he's so gifted that we could use some of this stuff for the website, and then you need a little bit higher resolution and
Right.
whatever. And
Yeah.
so just being able to provide tools for him that, I mean, it's been really, really exciting for me.
You will
Because
be...
he's gonna have a different perspective,
Well,
like
that's it, but-
he's
so let's also talk
like
about-
from this area, right?
Yeah.
So the things that he's going to
That's what
see
yeah.
and the things that he is going to photograph are different than what I'm going to photograph, right?
And he's going to know how to do it honorably, right?
Yes.
He knows the people want
I mean, he does
know.
some stuff that I would never do, but
Right, but
it's
he has
okay
the
for him.
permission.
Yeah,
Right, exactly. He's
for
one,
sure.
He's one of them. And once you get back and you're able to see him, you're going to see a new life that you've given him too, though.
Yeah.
Like
It makes me so happy. I love him so much.
Many of our viewers, don't quite understand this or don't have the ability to relate to it. But to be I think Pushy's 30-ish.
Is he? Yeah, he
Gotta
looks
be
so
clo-
young.
He's got to
He
be
looks
close
such
to
a baby
So
face.
he's a man and he's got responsibilities. And to be a man with responsibilities and no opportunity at work, and to always feel kind of like a beggar, that's rough. So to be empowered and have a job and a
Yeah.
responsibility,
Yeah.
he kind of skips a little bit more
Yeah.
than probably you've seen him in the past.
That's so sweet. It makes me
Sometimes-
happy. I've always had a big heart for him. I remember
Yeah.
years ago when he was kind of starting his music career, and
Yeah.
I was like,
That's another
know-
image of empowerment. What did you do for him then?
yeah, well, I mean, this sounds ridiculous to even say these words out loud, but I had more than one MacBook. Embarrassing to even say, but I had more than one MacBook, and I just thought, you know what? I don't actually need to have more than one MacBook. And so I knew that he was working on beats and different things like that, and that a MacBook can be a great tool for that. So I was like, hey, why not let him, have one of these? And so it's been fun too to see his, music and things like that growing too, just
Yeah.
because he is a really talented individual.
Yeah. So sometimes when we think about empowerment, it's providing somebody the tools to do something, because his ability to produce music and all types of stuff was there.
Yeah,
but
his
he
eye
had
for
no-
photography is insane.
Right, that's what I mean.
I look at some of his photos and I'm like, I would blow that up huge and put it in
Yeah.
my home. He's really talented.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what he could do
And
with
a great storyteller. So he's been taking
very
kind
great
of,
storyteller. He's doing all the things that I wanted to do.
Oh, right.
All the things I thought we were gonna do when we moved back. He's doing those things. And
Yeah.
honestly, I feel great about it. I'm like, oh, it just is another picture of, life doesn't always look the way that you're thinking that it's going to all the time, but there's so many beautiful things that can come out of it. And if I would have known then what I do now, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known, I wish we would have empowered him a long time ago, but
You wouldn't
obviously
have known, yeah.
So.
Yeah. There we
But, and okay, so we should say, obviously sometimes it is providing tools, right? And that's great. that's not what it always means though, right?
Sometimes it's
So
listening.
sometimes it can just be listening and just reminding somebody, you know, like who they are in Jesus and what they're capable of in his strength, and that you're with them, you know, that you're behind them, and that they're capable. And I think that for me, I didn't realize until I was like quite a bit older, like that words of affirmation. I feel like I actually learned this like 6 months ago, that words of affirmation were even a thing that mattered to me. I would have not necessarily thought that until somebody
can
like
evolve, yeah.
Yeah,
Especially
until
as you have a deficiency in an area.
yeah, and so somebody had like just said something like really encouraging, and to me felt very empowering, and it just made me realize like, wow, you know, sometimes just giving somebody that word, like just encouraging somebody and reminding them that they're not alone, and reminding them that, you know, that somebody believes in them. I think that is that, and I think too, I remember years ago when we were at Carla and Ron's up in the mountain, and somebody was asking, we were all asking different questions of the Haitian group that was kind of giving our group an intro, you know, the history and all these different things and different proverbs and whatever. And I remember somebody saying that they were really surprised by how intelligent they were. And
that was a panel that we were doing.
Yeah.
I can remember that. I use that moment often when I'm talking to groups.
Yeah, and I think that the reason sometimes we might think, you know, whether it's a homeless person on the street or an impoverished person or a drug addict or whatever it is, anybody or any person, you or me.
We tell ourselves a story.
Yeah, we totally do, and we can devalue somebody's brilliance or their worth or whatever just by making assumptions. And so I think just being reminded that everybody is capable of whatever it is that God has for them. Sometimes people just need to be affirmed and be told, like,
empowered.
You know, yeah, exactly. Like you know, like this is for you. Like you are able to do this. And I think because we live in a society in the States where you either there's like two sides of it. You're either torn down and told like you're never going to be able to do it, or on the flip side, people are telling you like, yeah, go get it. You're going to crush it. You know, whatever. And I think because our culture is so driven by success that we hear a lot of that all the time. Yeah. Whereas maybe a culture like Haiti, that's not something that people are thinking about all the time because everybody's just trying to survive. Everyone's just trying to eat. It's not like...
It's a very hard concept for people to wrap their head around, never enjoying a part of life much beyond survival. Like when I say survival, I don't mean surviving hard times, right? Like
we're struggling
not surviving
a
a tough situation.
Yeah.
I mean, literally every
survival.
day, your main goal is to find the calories and the water to stay alive.
Yeah, for sure.
Is a huge population.
For sure.
A huge percentage of the population of Haiti.
Yeah, for sure.
Where their life lives.
I think of that with Philip.
Yeah.
Our driver and friend.
Who misses you
and
dearly.
I love him. And I just remember one time, you know, going to his home. It obviously was around the corner from our house. And I just remember, you know, it's just this tiny little space. And the family was all gathered outside and they were having a meal. And it was rice. That's all that they had. And it was like an amount that in our world, you know, would feed like one of our toddlers, and they were all sharing it. And I remember him offering some of it, or his wife offering some of it to us, and just being so like not only like touched by that, but also heartbroken by that, and just feeling like, wow, like what can we do, you know, to like really empower them. And then we found out that he was like an insanely good driver, and so we gave him a job and
empowered him to take care of his family.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's a situation that will always just bless my heart, especially because he has literally saved our life with his driving skills.
He's saved
literally
multiple people. I mean,
literally.
There are people that might be watching this
or listening,
that have been chauffeured in his vehicles.
Yeah, he is so good at what he does. And had it not been just somebody saying like, I see this in you. Like, I see this in you. I believe in you. Yeah. Now I'm going to just like, here's an opportunity, you know? And it's amazing what can happen when you really just see people, when you really take the time to listen to them.
Take me down memory lane. I start getting emotional.
Yeah.
I got a couple things that built off. A couple of things that built off that. So, first, when I think about empowerment and listening to us kind of break it apart, it requires kind of selflessness, humility, right? Like when it comes to being like, hey, somebody's doing my job. Like you're here in the States, you're not there, and somebody else is doing that. I know me personally, sometimes that could rise up envy, jealousy, but it's like empowerment goes beyond that and sees like the big picture, right?
For me, it's just exciting.
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying,
I have my own struggles.
There are people that wrestle with it, because what I'm trying to relate to is the person that's able to push somebody aside and say, I'd rather do this myself.
Yeah. And I have done that. There's been times over the years where people have asked, like, hey, how can I help with this? Or how can I help with that?
Yeah,
and there's a part, well, I wouldn't necessarily say get out of my way, but there is a part of me
Men do that.
where I've
Men
had.
do that. Give me that screwdriver.
Okay. Where I've had this thought of, well, it would take longer to teach them than to just do it myself, and then I just do it myself. And then I wonder why I'm stressed out because I have all this stuff going on.
True empowerment doesn't weigh those things, right? True empowerment says there's a bigger reward in it taking a little bit longer time, or maybe not being as perfect. So you were kind of going around some things around empowerment that made me think about what I was saying that I thought you were going to say about women. Like, you're wearing jewelry right now that actually, by purchasing it, is empowering someone. Like, there's a lot of stages and steps to empowering. We're talking about like a pushy, where now he gets to provide for his family and his people. What does that kind of tap into you? When it comes to, like, because I know that when you wear things like this and you adorn them, you're adorning them for the beauty, the physical part, but I know your heart is connected to something kind of much deeper.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, it's obviously been like a stage and a process too, because years ago, had you asked me this question 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I would have said, it just would have looked different, because I thought that I needed to do the manufacturing, and I needed to do this, and I needed to do, not me personally manufacturing, but I needed to have employees and, have them making certain things, and then my role would be this or my role would be that. And over the years, just because of the things that I've learned about myself, about other people, just about life in general, and just the different stages that we've gone through, I now realize, like, wait a minute, I can actually like double empower, because there's people already that are super passionate about moms just like I am, or about families like I am. And maybe their strength is manufacturing. I mean, there's some people that are producing beautiful things in Haiti and all of, other places in the world. So maybe what I've realized is, oh, wow, like, I'm actually really good at telling people about things, or showing things, or showing like my excitement about things. And I've met people who are like, that is not at all mine, but they're really great at the business and the manufacturing side of things. Maybe a component, right?
Exactly. Like the design component.
Exactly.
Or the building a team or whatever. Which
exactly. So
sometimes we can be good at all of those things, which is why I want to do them, but then trying to do each one of them is its own job.
Yes. And then you realize, like, you're going to burn out before you start. And which is why I think it took me so long to kind of get to the spot where I'm at now, like actually launching a storefront. But for me, it's just been really exciting to see, like, wow, okay, I know this person is already running something really beautiful, and this person is, and this person is, and this person is. Why even try to duplicate that? Because I know that there's some of them where they're still trying to make ends meet, and they're still busting their tails trying to keep these people employed. Well, why not use the skills and gifts that I have to sell this beautiful stuff that they're creating, that their artisans are creating, empower them to empower them. It's like, I just think sometimes we don't look as broad as we can. And sometimes, like I said, it just takes kind of learning as you go along. But I guess for me, obviously there is a time and a place for charity. Obviously there is time and a place for a free meal, or obviously there's a time and a place to, if God asks you to give somebody a laptop so they can do their thing, obviously there's a time and a place for all of those things. But what would you most want if it was you, right? Like, sure, are there times where somebody has given us something and it has met, like, you literally just prayed and somebody responded and gave you that? Of course, absolutely. But there's also a beauty, especially for somebody that doesn't have the abundance and resources and opportunity around them like we do, to be able to do that for themselves. And because not only are they able to do it for themselves and their family, they're also showing their kids, like, hey, this is possible. Like, there is, you do have opportunity and future for you out there. And so, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it, and well, We'll see what happens.
We'll see what
I'm also a
happens.
little scared about it, so it's fine. Whatever.
We can get close to wrapping up here.
Yeah.
I wanted to share a little about my teacher of empowerment. The infamous Guy Morales.
Guy Morales.
Morales.
You say Morales, and I say Morales.
Whatever. More or less.
And it also
More
looks
or
like
less.
Guy, not Guy.
Guy more or less.
Guy more or less. Usually he's more.
He is. But I mean, these things happen in real.
So for people that don't know who Guy is,
So Guy is our country director.
Yeah,
yes,
he's
our
Upstream's country director. He is amazing. He was doing really cool things before we ever came along, and we have the blessing to not only empower him, but he empowers us too.
Yeah. Yeah, our bond was thick early, and I shared with him. I had the ability to share with him. On some of our very first trips together, my heart's desire, and he saw that as sincere, and he basically just said, if you're really interested in this and you're along for the long haul, can I kind of get you to pump the brakes a little bit and see how I think it should be done? So it's like whenever I had kind of that unction to do something, he would say, well, here would be an example. When we wanted to start doing things around the school and city, so he's like, well, let's create a community council. Let's bring some people in from the community to share what their problems are and what they would like for you to do for them, because
and it's always so moving too to listen to them and to really just hear.
What he said after that though was so important. He's like, because Joe, he says, there are people in this community that are praying and praying and praying every day to see something happen. So then when somebody comes in and does something that takes the same amount of time and maybe the same amount of money, but wasn't anything that they were praying about, it's like almost like it's an unreceived blessing. An example would be like, imagine if we went into our community and we just felt like we really wanted to build them a playground. And they watch us build a playground, and we have pictures of smiley, happy people receiving their playground, but they're all sitting around and be like, wow, 10 people came for 5 days and worked hard and X amount of dollars went to build this playground. Meanwhile, this whole time they've been praying about getting water in the community. Or a bunch of people's roofs that were leaking. And it might be a whole nother year. It may never happen again that they have a group or a team like this, or that money come into their community. So it's like they sometimes can look at that playground the whole time and be like, So even empowerment, like you said.
You could go into City Soleil and you could see 1 million homes without a front door, right? They have a little curtain hanging, and you could be like, oh, I need to give them a front door. And so you go in there and you give them a front door, and they're probably like, wow, that's really cool. Thanks for the front door. That was great. And then that night they go to bed and it starts raining and their roof is leaking all over their bed.
Right.
And they're like, oh, if they would have listened to me, they would have known that before I needed a door, I needed a roof,
So obviously we're talking a lot about empowerment in our particular
realm of, kind of what we're,
life. But I think it's just really applicable. I think about how often somebody is carrying, like a real issue here in the States and at home, and they finally are vulnerable enough for you to share it with them. If all of a sudden you just start spewing all kinds of counsel and what to do and what not to do, it can almost take you back a little bit, like your problems are so simple that somebody could just come in and fix them.
And rather than waiting and saying, okay, what have you tried?
Sure.
What have you done?
Or what do you think are some of the solutions? So anyways, interesting stuff. Empowerment. If you could think of an opposite, sometimes, when you go to look up the definition for a word, it helps to see the opposite
The antonym,
of it. What would be the antonym of empowerment?
The antonym of empowerment. Oppression.
Ooh. Yeah, I was just thinking a smaller word like selfishness. But oppression would probably be almost even better. Oppression would be a sense of selfishness too. But yeah, it's interesting. We work a very uphill battle. I think one of the reasons why God gave us the name Upstream, it gets thrown around a lot and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But really what it meant to me when God was giving it to me was this idea that we're constantly trying to fix problems that are symptoms. And we really need to go upstream to the root. I can remember the 3 dreams that came in a row. It was me and all of the city having to go down to the river and pick out trash, like before our day could start. Like that was what the dream was. It was like everybody in this community just woke up, went to the Mississippi River, collected their bag of trash, turned it in, and then they could start their day. Normal, regular days, but that was the start of their day. And on the 3rd day, God was just like, why don't you guys go upstream and see where the problem is. And it was a huge sewer with just garbage coming out,
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, this is much easier to just work on plugging this hole up than to collect garbage all the time. So for me, and I know for you as well, when our heart breaks for a lot of the symptoms of sin or the symptoms of oppression or the symptoms of selfishness, the real solution sometimes is empowerment.
It's always listening to the people that are enduring it,
Yeah.
because we're never going to fully understand, right? And so we might go in there with our idea of how to get the trash out of the water, and they're like, wait, no,
Yeah.
like we got to go way up here to the beginning, And so I think really paying attention to people and hearing their story and hearing, what their life is like and just asking them, like, how can I serve you? How can I come alongside you? How can I remind you to keep on fighting? What is it that I can do? And that's what we all want, right? And I think sometimes we strip that away from people because they're poor or because they're addicted or because they're, less than in society's eyes in some way. We can strip away their brilliance. We can strip away, whatever it is that God's created them to do by just trying to do it for them, and a lot of times not even doing the right thing, Yeah,
the purest forms of empowerment that I've had to live through sometimes don't feel great. Like if I were to think about chunks of money that come in sometimes, I think of ways that it would be used way better on many levels. Mostly, though, honestly, almost every time, it's to impress those that it's not going to affect. It's the people that would help give the money the next time around. There's times where I walk around our school and I'm like, this thing by now could look so much different or whatever, but in that moment, it's like the people that you're trying to empower are content, and what they're more worried about is the widow down the street or a funeral that needs to be paid.
Absolutely.
Or a food program that needs to continue. And as an American, sometimes you're like, I feel like but true empowerment is that ability to take a back seat, sometimes to our own agendas, and serve. I think you nailed it on the head. It looks a little bit like servant leadership. So anyways, fun talking about empowerment. It's kind of, like I said, it's one of those things where, when we were building the content for our organization, it wasn't a word that you saw on everybody's website, and it's become much more.
It makes me think,
Yeah.
if somebody were to say to you, Joe, how can I empower you?
I could tell you.
Could you?
Yes.
Okay, tell me.
So we've flipped the golden rule on its head many times, right? You and I have said this. The scripture says, do unto others as you would want done unto yourself. The best way to translate that to me is do unto others what they would want you to do for them.
Yeah, not what you
So I can
want.
think of 2 occasions in my lifetime where somebody came to me and said, Joe, I see your gifts and talents. I know what you're capable of. How can I release you into that to do that well? That was empowering.
Yeah.
When somebody can come to me and say, I'm sure there's some yuck and some garbage and things we'll have to clean up along the way, but I can see where you are gifted and where you are talented, and I'm going to release you into that. And I'm even going to breathe fire onto that. I'm going to pour gasoline onto whatever fires you make to help it grow. I was able to do that in the vocational world and also in ministry. When
So, okay, in 2021,
so for
today,
me,
July 14th, Gospel's Gotcha Day.
Yes.
How can I empower you today?
Well, it's by always encouraging people to work in
No, you specifically.
me specifically. Like, how can my wife, Sami and Joe, empower me?
Yeah.
Release me into the things that that I'm good at and that I'm talented at.
Oh my gosh, cooking dinner. You're super good at that. You're so good at that. And
So
you're really
there is
good at
a
keeping your
problem.
house
There is a
clean.
problem with being good at a lot of things. When you're good at a lot of things, people will empower you in the things that serve them the best.
Right. Do unto others.
I'm really good at doing laundry. No, but so isn't that what we all want, though? Imagine if people were to come around Sami
We're getting
Rogalski.
passionate now.
Imagine if people were to come around Sami Rogalski and say, I can see, I hear your heart. I know what's in your heart. Like, how can I help you be that person? For some people, like take
I don't
our
remember if anyone's asked me that.
take our organization for example. We're talking hypotheticals here. We're talking best. Do you have any idea how many people in the world we could serve if somebody just said, we see how great you guys are at doing what you're doing, and here's just boatloads of money and resources and help, and let us give you, like, obviously there's balance to everything, but that's what true empowerment looks like. True empowerment looks like somebody coming alongside Sami or somebody coming along Joe or Ben or whoever and saying, I'm going to release you into the things that you were created for, encourage you in those areas that you're created for, finance those, whatever, give you a job in those areas that you're created for. That's what, let's call perfected empowerment would look like. It looks like us fulfilling our purposes, whether they're in a moment or in a lifetime, and people around us cheering us on in those, and not
like
being jealous
Yeah.
and
I like it.
covetedness or whatever. So
Well, I don't covet you cooking dinner all the time.
I'll just keep doing it. Just gonna keep doing it. All right.
You are really good at it.
Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for talking about stuff that we really like to talk about.
Yeah, I do like to talk about this. Good one, Ben. Ben picked this, didn't he?
Yeah.